Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We're talking about the weight of people who left. The weight of people who left. So I have a question for you. Who are you trying to keep? Who are you trying to keep that God has already released? All right. Is it a friend who stopped calling? Is it the family member who chose distance? Is it the relationship that ended years ago, but you still keep replaying the conversations, reading over the text, looking at their social media page? Because here's the truth: some relationships, they end not because they were bad relationships, you guys, but because either you grew or they grew. All right. Either you grew or they grew. And and a lot of us have been holding on to these relationships because, you know, I guess I would say not because it's healthy, right? But because we are attached to this thing called loyalty, right? Because, we fear rejection, because we don't want to get it wrong, right? And so we try. But the reality of it is that relationship is over. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about today, you guys. The weight of the people who left. All right. The weight of the people who left. It's Transformational Tuesday. And, we're going to continue this conversation on grief. All right. Yesterday, we talked about unspoken grief, right? The losses that we never acknowledge, right, as our level of self. And today, we're talking about interactions with others, really talking about um, the relational grief, right? Mourning people who still live, but they're no longer a part of our life, right? They're no longer aligned, or we're just no longer aligned with them. I think that sometimes we can be, kind of self-centered in a way where we believe that, oh, I just outgrew them, or oh, I'm just this, or I'm just too much for them. And I do think that that type of conversation is a very protective conversation, and it doesn't allow the heart to truly, do what it needs to do to really process what has happened. And the truth is that sometimes people outgrow us. You know what I mean? Sometimes people have other ideas for their lives, other events that happen, right? And so they leave the relationship, or the relationship dissolves as a consequence of their desire changed, right? And when we're not sitting at the table and looking at it from all angles, I do feel like it can be difficult for us uh, to truly grieve, right, appropriately, because, you know, relationships are so important to us. But because of trauma, because of attachment, because of those type of things, a lot of times we don't know how to let them go. Like, we understand in theory, I think, a lot about good morning, Mariah. I think we understand a lot about people are in your life for a season, people are in your life for a reason, people are in your life for a lifetime, right? We get that in context. But all too often, I think that we don't really know how to apply that, right? Because we see ourselves sometimes as needing to be fixed or broken. Then we constantly get in a pattern of trying to hold on to individuals, people, places, things, situations that really don't align, or we don't align with them. All right. And there's no judgment here at all, right? It's a conversation this morning, really about relational grief. All of us experience it. Now, I want to give the caveat: this is a relational grief for people who already exist in our life. All right. The relationships that you could be at the store and you'll see them, right? You can scroll down social media if they're your friend, or, somebody says. So these are people who are still alive, but you have to grieve them. All right. So again, I ask you, who are you trying to keep that God divinely aligned reasons, guess what? They already been released. All right. We don't need to judge that. Again, we don't need to judge that. But I do think that we need to understand that unbraiding any relationship is going to be emotional, because the mind doesn't want to change. The mind will sophisticatedly come up with every reason why this individual should stay, right? Why you should go back, okay? And a lot of times it's just over, you guys, okay? It's just over. So is it that friend that stopped calling? Is it that, again, that family member that, you know, that chose distance? Is it the relationship that ended years ago but you're still replaying it? If I could have did something different, if I could have said this, maybe something would have happened. Because here's the truth, some relationships just end not because they were bad, but just because, you guys outgrew each other. All right. And that's okay. All right. I think the problem becomes when we hold on. All right. Not because it's healthy, again, because of this thing called loyalty. And, in the Bible, I don't know if it really talks about, I don't know if loyalty is one of those um principles, right, in the Bible, right? Love is, forgiveness is, right? Compassion is, grace is, right? But we tend to be loyal, right? Loyal to a fault, loyal to relationships, loyal to things that are not always in alignment. So let me tell you about a client that I worked with. All right. She came into my office heartbroken. Okay. Heartbroken, honey. All right. Uh Heartbroken. And so when she came into my office, she was heartbroken. Not because she because someone died, but because guess what? A friendship ended. All right. And she said to me, we were best friends for 15 years. All right. And then she just stopped calling me. No explanation, no closure, nothing. And I asked her, so when did the friendship start to feel a little one-sided? After some conversation back and forth and getting some more details, I asked her, when did the relationship started to feel one-sided? All right. She paused and she said, honestly, probably over the last 5 or 6 years. All right. And she became very, very emotional, and started to cry. All right. Because here's what she didn't realize. And so many people don't realize some relationships end not because they're bad. Again, it's my third time saying it, but because we outgrew each other. All right. You're not the same person you were 5 years ago. Okay. The same person that and that other person is not the same person either. All right. And sometimes love, you know, sometimes we can outgrow the container and love can still exist, but we have to let it go. We have to let it go. So in today's lesson, we're talking about the weight of the people who left. All right. The weight of the people who left when you're really grieving someone who's still alive, but um the connection hasn't died, right? The connection hasn't died. And again, we don't have to judge this. We don't have to, do anything. We just need to. Good morning, big brother, big little brother. We just have to, just be mindful that these things happen. All right. So my why for today's lesson, all right? So today's lesson, I'm doing it because relational grief sometimes is the loneliest type of grief, all right? Because truly nobody died, and so many people don't understand why you're still mourning, right? Why you're still grieving. You don't get the sympathy cards, you don't get the I'm sorry's, right? You get, it's time to move on. It's over, right? You kind of get the stiff arm, all right? But somewhere in you really can't move on, right? Like it's really hard to move on. All right. And a lot of people, unless have experienced that, they don't know. All right. um and what's happening is that you're not just grieving the person, you're often grieving the person you were with them. All right. The future you imagine for you guys, all right, and the dreams that you guys share together. All right. And I want to say that again. So I think that a lot of times we think that we're grieving the individual. And I always say that people come into your life, right? And they activate a part of you. All right. They activate a part of you. Um, that part of you is really what you're experiencing in their presence. And a lot of times I think that we will associate the feelings that we're experiencing on the inside with the individual. All right, with the individual. And the truth be told is that when you're grieving an individual, you're not really grieving that individual. You are truly grieving who you were when you were with them, meaning you could have been a little bit more friendly. You probably was more talkative. You probably was more creative around them, right? It's something about that chemistry or that connection that allowed you to experience something within yourself that you had not yet been able to experience. And I say yet, right? Experience in someone else. All right. And so you're grieving that. And then there's the relational part. All right. You guys probably had dreams about what you would do, right? And you braided yourself or attached yourself into that vision. All right. And that's a part of yesterday's conversation, really unbraiding or grieving those aspects of what you imagine for yourself. All right. And grieving those aspects of yourself and what you imagine for yourself and giving it space, right, to live. All right. So this lesson is truly about releasing people without needing the closure, you guys. It's about finding peace and the clarity that they were meant to leave. All right. There's a saying about, if you love someone, let them go. And if it's meant to be, right, they will come back. All right. But a lot of times, again, because of our attachment style, when someone leaves, it triggers a deeper wound in us. And a lot of times we don't want to feel rejection. We don't want to experience perceived judgment or judgment from our community, from our environments. We don't want to have to explain, everything that has happened. And so we'll stay a lot of times too long. All right. And then sometimes when it's over, there's really no space to really talk about it because again, this is not like an actual death. This is just a release of a relationship. And that kind of grief nobody really sees and experiences. All right. So my disclaimer for today, we already know that this lesson is just educational for educational informational purposes. All right. It's not therapy or medical advice. Listening and participating in today's conversation does not create a client therapy or client coaching relationship with myself, Dr. Sheila Little. All right. But this lesson was created for and will help you to become more aware of relational grief, all right, and how to really release people who are no longer aligned, all right, or who, and when I say that, I'm saying on both sides, all right, who you no longer align with or they no longer align with you. All right. We all know that awareness is the first step. So become aware and be honest with yourself. But we also know that transformation happens when you take action, all right, by accepting what ended and making space for what's next. All right. If you experience some type of dis-ease throughout this lesson, I would advise you to seek some help, right? Call out a therapist, a licensed therapist, get you a coach or somebody to really help you, or you can always join the project at SheilaLittle.com/life. If you haven't already and you think this is a great conversation, make sure you invite a friend to the Elevating Life with Sheila Little Facebook page or subscribe to the YouTube channel at I Am Shaping Solutions, YouTube / I think I Am Shaping Solutions. All right. So good morning. It's Transformational Tuesday. Let's take our deep breath. No pressure, just your presence on this morning. While we have this conversation about relational grief, you guys, this week we're talking about grief. All right. The weight we carry with our grief. Remember, this is a 6-week series. We talked about the weight we carry with the wrestle, okay, with the wrestling in life. We talked about the weight we carry in our identity. We talked about the weight we carry in our exhaustion. All right. And so today we're talking about the weight we carry with the grief, right? The grief that we experience in our life, and that grief of in our love of self, in our interactions with others, in our focus, in our emotions and energy, you guys. So let's inhale. I release who I've been trying to keep. All right. And then let's exhale. And I make space for what's meant for me. All right. All right. That can be very scary, right? Like what's meant for me. A lot of us, when we have very skewed um, uh, lenses for life, and when we've only experienced or only been able to see the negatives in our life, we have a belief that we don't have anything good to experience. All right. And so I want to offer you this in this moment. When we make space for what's meant for you, that is including the good. All right, that is including the good. So welcome back. Welcome back to Project Life. Welcome back to Life Lessons with Dr. Sheila Little. If you're new here, I am Dr. Sheila Little. All right. Life Lessons is a part of Project Life. Project Life is where we turn theory into practice, right? It's an initiative that I started this year, working with the individuals that I work with, hundreds of individuals, thousands of individuals. I really felt like there was a gap, right, in language. There was a gap in understanding. And so this year, I chose to close my books, right? And really focus, close my books, meaning being very limited in who I accepted as clients, and really um, develop this project, get online 4 to 5 times a week and have a conversation. Consistency is key. And so every morning, my goal is to get up, have a conversation with you about an aspect of your life, okay? About your love of self, your interactions with others, your focus and your energy. And so Project Life is where we turn theory into practice, where we turn awareness into alignment, and where we make healing a habit. All right. So drop a word in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling on this morning. All right. And if you want to get a little spicy, drop a word in the chat that describes how relational grief feels for you. All right. How relational grief feels for you. I've experienced relational grief before, definitely had some friendships uh that ended, right? That ended. And I want to give you hope on this morning. Those relationships that ended, I just think that it was a season that was over for that dynamic, right? So the dynamic that we had created an opportunity for the relationship to dissolve. And there was a reset, I do believe, that happened in myself, in those individuals. And then we were able to reconnect, you know, in kind of, in a sense, reset for who we were as adults, right? A lot of times we have friendships, right? We talked about proximity before, and we have friendships, and these people have been with us for so long, right? But they only know you for, the 16 to 12-year-old, the high schooler, the 20-year-old, right? And you 40 now. And sometimes a part of their brain is just, when they say that first impression, sometimes people can't, those relationships that been with you so long, they don't see your evolution. All right. They don't see your evolution. And so it can start to cause some conflict. So when these relationships end, right, the dynamic of that relationships end, that relationship ends, it does not mean that these relationships don't come back, right? They just come back to meet you for who you are now and in your needs now. And that's the weight. And that's the weight. And we're trying to hold on to a version of ourselves in that conversation yesterday that has died, right? And sometimes that relationship is more attached to that version of you than it is to who you are today. All right, to who you are today. So let's go into our body scan on this morning. Like I said, drop a word in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling, and if you're bossy, right? Describe your relational grief, any type of relational grief that you feel. So let's start scanning our bodies. All right, so we're going to imagine that sun over your head. A big part of me taking this time at around between 15 and 20 minutes into our conversation is to really pause, right? To really pause and get back into relationship with our body, okay? Our body is so important. And a lot of times when we are in emotional disconnect or fight, freeze, and fawn, which is nervous system states, we can be so disconnected from our bodies. And the first rule of really manifesting is doing for yourself what you're seeking these relationships to do for you. All right. And so scanning your body, although it may feel woo woo, or you may not even be able to be present enough, it's the practice of it every day that really teaches your body that, hey, I see you, you're safe. All right. I understand. And I'm going to fill you up. Those are the things we want other people to do for us. And so this is about taking a moment to do that for ourselves. So imagining that sun over our head, just pouring down some compassion, some love, whatever you want on this morning. I tend to do kindness, right? And just being kind to ourselves, right? And having some compassion. My meditation this morning was on kindness and compassion. So I do really love those aspects. So as that sun pours down, we're going to feel it, as we get present in our body, feeling it at our feet, really grounding so that you can release. All right. And then moving up our legs. All right. Into your hips, just warming up your body, filling your body up. All right. Breathing into your stomach, where a lot of us have held onto people who have left. All right. And we feel that in our gut. All right. And then rising up our chest, right? Where really a lot of the heartache that we feel about these relationships get stuck. Okay. And we carry it there. All right. And as we're acknowledging, our heart space, making sure that we realize and acknowledge our spine. So up our backs, right? Around our rib cage, and then up our shoulders, right? Really feeling the weight that we carry as we try to keep connecting to what's already gone, you guys, to what's already gone. And then down our arms, activating our hands. A lot of times when we're carrying weight, it can be very paralyzing. Like I said, that fight, freeze, or fawn. And so we want to activate our hands and our arms on this morning. All right. Coming up our jaw, really releasing and coating our throat chakra. All right. So that we can have the confidence and the ability to really say goodbye. All right. Say goodbye. And a lot of times we haven't been able to say that because that throat chakra is stuck. All right. Up our face, softening our ears for this conversation on this morning. Focusing our eyes, right? Really, so that we can see the good in today and so that we can extract the goodness from those relationships that have ended, activating our brain so neuroplasticity can take place and rewire these new beliefs and this new information. All right, up the top of our heads, pouring down like a cup would over pour with water, and just feeling that kindness just rinse over our largest organ, which is our skin on today. And then breathing in again, it is safe for me to let go. And then breathing out, I bless what was and release what no longer, what no longer exists. All right. So who is this lesson for today? This is for you if you've been grieving someone who's still alive but no longer aligned. All right. If you replay old messages or stalk timelines, trying to uh, trying to make sense of what has ended. All right. If you romanticize, all right, if you romanticize what was instead of accepting what is, and if you're trying to really connect to what has already expired, all right, this is for you if you keep someone that God has, if you're trying to keep someone in your life that God has already released, you guys. So my powerful quote for today is, some relationships end, not because they're bad, but because you grew. All right. So let's talk about it. When talking about the weight of people who left, mourning relationships that ended, we mourn relationships that ended again, not because they're bad. All right. But this is a form of relational grief. All right. And mourning, uh, we can be again mourning that friend, we can be mourning a family member, a partner. All right. And again, just talking about the loyalty that we have towards these individuals, you know, um, but the end of the relationship, it truly doesn't mean that it's the end of love. All right. That you wasted your time, that it wasn't worth loving them. It means that that the relationship has truly served its purpose. All right. And that you have the opportunity to take those lessons and take those experiences, and move forward with them. That, that this relationship in some way have given you clarity. All right. And sometimes, all right, and sometimes closure, it doesn't come with a conversation. And sometimes closure doesn't need a conversation. It just needs, you know, sometimes closure just comes with acceptance. I remember dating a guy. Um, I knew he wasn't going to be my husband. I knew that. However, the way I felt about him, right, the way I felt in my body is how I wanted to feel for my husband, you know? And so I would tell him that, right? Like, man, the way I feel in my body is like the way I want to feel about my husband. I was so grateful, right, that I got to experience like this fullness, or this activation, or this attractiveness that I had yet to experience up until that point. So when the relationship dissolved, there was as the relationship dissolved, there was a level of clarity of, I am just so grateful for you being a part of my life. No matter what happens to us, there was something that activated in me that allowed me to experience how I wanted to feel, right, when I'm in the presence of my husband. Again, based on dynamics and things like that, I just knew that this individual was not going to be my husband. But it wasn't about him more than it was about how I felt in my body. And as a consequence of that relationship, unbraiding, I was left with a sense of gratitude, right? Because I had never truly experienced that. Now, two things could have happened. I could have chased that. I could have made something, because up to that point, I had never experienced that. Or I could have seen that as an opportunity to know what that feels like. And so now, because I know what that feels like, I can articulate that. That gave me clarity about the conversations and how I wanted to feel when I was in the presence of somebody, and being a person that's a lot of times at that time, all head and limited, heart. I was just so grateful. I was so grateful. All right. I had a client one time that I was working with, and she had a best friend, okay, for 20 years. All right. They grew up together, they grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same school. They did a lot together, okay, throughout their lives. But over the last few years, what she noticed is that the friendship started to feel a little one-sided. All right. Her friend only called her when she needed things, right? She started to feel drained, after the conversations. But, she kept showing up, right? She kept showing up for the friendships because she thought, we've been friends for 20 years, right? I just can't walk away. After some unpacking and talking to her, I had to ask, who are you being loyal to, right? Is it the friend now, or is it the friend she is now, or is the friend she used to be? All right. Who are you being loyal to? Is it the person that she is today, or is it the 20 years that you guys were together? And she had to pause and really think about, like, what was it that was keeping her there. And I want you to think about that. All right. I want you to think about that, because I do think that we try to, or we're tied to versions of the relationship that no longer exist today. Okay. That no longer exist today. All right. A lot of our relationships have expired a long time ago, but because of the duty and the loyalty to the length of time that you've invested, to the experiences that you guys have had together. All right. A lot of times we're more loyal to that than we are the individual. And as a consequence of that, we end up getting bitter. We end up having some conflict, right? We end up not really wanting to answer the phone for these people. All right. Because what we understand intellectually is that I don't want to be here in the present. And everything I'm doing now in this present moment is not about who this person is to me now, or, the relationship now is based on what they did when I was 14, 15, 20, right? What we experienced before. All right. Now, I do want to say that this is not a bad thing, but if you are moving yourself to do things in this present moment that has nothing to do with this present moment, then you're living in the past, okay? Or you're living in the future, okay? So I'm doing this because I don't want her to think that I don't still love her. I'm doing this because I don't want him to feel like, that I've changed and like something's wrong with him, right? I'm doing this because we've just been cool for so long and I know her situation or I know his situation, so I need to beat her. I'm doing this because I've invested 20 years, 30 years, right, in this relationship, in this interaction, and I don't know how to give it up. So when you're doing things because of a future outcome or a past, right, and it has nothing to do with this moment, I just want you to take a minute and pause and think about that. All right, because when I start saying, hey, your cutoff game is real, and we really live in this society where our cutoff game is just like we'll cut somebody off because we have really truly built, right, this bitterness and this resentment and all of this because our behaviors and our responses are not in alignment with what we want today, and so we're cutting people off. Listen, if you just stop feeding it, right, because it's not aligned with you, if you just stop trying to, right, do the right thing, right, trying to do the right thing, the relationship will dissolve, right? Right. The relationship will dissolve. You'll get the message. They'll get the message. All right. So I spent months working with this client. All right. Honoring what the friendship was, right? Accepting, helping her to really accept what had become, right? And really making peace with the fact that some people are meant to leave, right? Some people are meant to leave. And I do understand that uh just the healthy way of leaving, right? Of unbraiding. And we don't have to know why. And I think another thing, and it's coming up in my spirit as I'm talking about this, people are going through their own things. All right. So some people are not answering their phones, some people are not calling, their schedule is changing. If you watched my friend's interview with News 5, I talked about friendships, right? And a big part of friendships is this being flexible, right? Being flexible as our friends grow, right? I have friends that I used to talk to every day that I may talk to once a year now, right? I have friends that when we started off, we were um, we were young, we were partying, right? They went off and they got married, they had kids, I had kids, so we changed in that relationship. And so a lot of times when we're talking now, it's about those times, right? But we understand that over life has changed us as individuals. Like at 20, we was at the limelight, big kicking it, up all night. Uh, at this point we're parents, right? In Jack and Jill meetings, right? Just a totally different aspect of who we are. And I think if we can reconcile and truly understand that we're changing and our needs are changing, then we don't have to point the finger at anybody. We can understand that relationship served me at that time and it's no longer serving my needs, or I don't have the desire to serve the relationship the way I used to. All right. So I want to be honest with you. Um, again, like I've shared with you, a lot of times I've had to grieve certain relationships that has uh, uh, family members, right? Like family dynamics. A big part of that, I do feel like the relationship with my mother, right? A big relationship, like my parents in general. There was a time where I know for sure that I wanted my parents to feel like they had a good daughter. And I definitely was very active in participating that message or communicating that message to them. And then when I got my own family, started my own business, and kind of started to heal and started to work from my wise woman and not the wounded me, I do feel like that a big part of that desire to be there for my parents became different. And it shifted our relationships or those interactions. So where I would talk to them more, see them more, that shifted. right? And a big part of that was because I had shifted. Now, the first time, it happened, I do feel like grieving that was a challenge, right? Because these are individuals, this is my mom and dad, and I want them to be this way. But the honest part about it is the reason our relationship was the way it was a big part of me. And I had to get honest about that. And when I say a big part of me, it was because of where I was at and what I needed at the time. And because I no longer needed that, when I stepped back, what I realized was that, oh, we talk once or twice a week now, but it was a time where I needed to talk to them every day. And when I stepped back from making those calls and doing that, and then they wasn't calling, it's like, well, why they don't call me? They call their other kids all the time. They do this. And it was like, oh no, like you were calling them, like you needed them at that time, and now you're different, right? And the relationship is now different, all right? And accepting the relationship now for what it is with, I have aging parents, so I understand that we still have other seasons of differences that's going to come in that relationship. Does that make sense? All right. And so that relationship really shifting with my parents, and how we talk and how often we talk, was definitely something I had to grieve, right? Something that I had to let go of, and something I had to understand how to experience, for the woman that I am now. All right. And that relationship with my parents have shifted so many times, right? It has truly changed, where there's been times where I had to step away and step back in. And the truth of the matter is, my parents have been who they are, their the entirety of their life. And my needs have shifted. Okay, my needs have shifted. And so as a consequence, it created a shift in those relationships. All right, if that makes sense, or if you had to experience those type of shifts with a parent, a loved one, drop a heart in the chat, and or drop a comment in chat and let me know. So here's our mirror moment. All right, here's our mirror moment. I want you to think about, who have you been trying to keep, again, that God has already released? And more importantly, what would it feel like to finally let them go? That version of the relationship, the thing that you're trying to hold on to, what if you let that go? I talked about my kids yesterday, but even in my relationship with my kids' father, letting that romantic relationship go, right? That the romantic aspect of, us being together and things like that, really letting that go, and planting a seed for the co-parenting and friendship, and being able to water that, and having now a different relationship, right, with this same individual. And I'm sharing these stories because I want to give you hope. Okay. I want to give you hope. Every relationship is not unhealthy. All right. It's just not in alignment with what you need now. All right. And who you are now. And especially like when kids are involved, or, parents, and things like that, you get the permission to change, and you get the permission to shift. But we also have to understand the ripple effect of that. And I've seen parents, right, of people who have kids, because the romantic relationship is no longer there, right? Now it affects the dynamics that they have with their children. And, really learning how to unbraid, or unattach yourself from the romantic relationship, right? And grieve that, right? I thought we were going to get married, and the kids were going to come over, and we were going to have time to, be with the grandkids and all of that together, right? Really letting that go, right? For an opportunity for some other thing to birth. And you won't see that, right? That clarity won't come as long as you're continuing to, hold on, or be mad, or, or fight about, right? The romantic idea of what the relationship holds. All right. And I've just seen too many families, separate, too many kids affected, because the romanticized idea has not been grieved, in a healthy way, and it has not brought about a clarity of, this is the legacy. We have kids together. Do we need to go to therapy? How do we still be in relationship if we can, right? to be able to move forward for our kids and our grandkids. All right. Right. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Put a heart in the chat for me. All right. So here's 5 things that your interactions want you to know. So these relationships want you to know that you are attached to loyalty. And that's why you're stuck. All right. You think that a lot of times if you really love them, then, and if they really loved you, then they wouldn't let you go or you can't let them go. All right. But love doesn't require you to stay where you're no longer growing. All right. Loyalty without alignment is self-abandonment, you guys. Loyalty without alignment is self-abandonment. So you can love someone and still release them. All right. All right. What just came up an image for me was, the flowers that grow up in the springtime that has the little white little cotton things on them, right? And what happens is those things grow, but they're seeds, right? And in the releasing it from this stem, those seeds go out and they plant other things, right? They plant other things. And so I think that's a good analogy that when we actually let go of the version of the relationship that has died, we give it opportunity to plant seeds, maybe in that relationship in the future, or for a different relationship to be birthed, either in this individual or even in you to become a better friend, a better employee, a better worker, or whatever. But we're not allowing it to release, right? So that new seeds can be planted, and so that we can water those new seeds and see what becomes of poetically, the garden of our relationships. All right. Because we keep recycling the same issues over and over and over again. Number 2, your relationships want you to know that the end of the relationship doesn't mean that that the love that you invested was wasted. Okay, so just because it ended, it doesn't mean that it wasn't meaningful, you guys. Listen, the friendship taught you something, all right? The relationship shaped you in some type of way, some type of way, shape, or form. And the person, that individual, whether you know it or not, helped you grow, all right? They helped you grow. And now, all right, they've served their purpose in your life. You've served your purpose in their life, okay? So that love, it wasn't wasted, you guys. It was only preparation for what you wanted. And a lot of times we're thinking that it's wasted because our vision for the relationship didn't get fully realized. And so we'll throw our vision out with the bathwater because I wanted to marry this individual, because I wanted this friendship to last 50 years, because I wanted this, and now I can't do it with this individual. We'll throw that whole idea out with the person. And it's like, no, right? That person may have helped you to get the clarity about what you want. Now, what you have the great opportunity to do is, you know, unattach that person, right? Like, in a sense, pull that person out and then allow for space for another person to enter, right? So you don't have to press stop. You don't have to take the tape out, right? You can just pause, right? And then another individual can come in to help you fully realize that vision that you have. But so many of us like wanted to get married, but because I'm not marrying this person, then, I ain't gonna try to get married no more, right? So many of us wanted to love and things like that, but because I couldn't experience it with this person, then I'm not going to do it anymore, right? You're still grieving that relationship, and you have to know that you've grown, you've learned, right? And it's time to move on. All right. And it's time to move on. And don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If that's something you want to experience, you can still experience it. Okay. All right. Your relationships want you to know that some people are meant to leave, and that is not punishment. It is redirection for both of you guys, right? It's just redirection, you guys. When people leave, a lot of times we think it's personal, but sometimes, God removes people, circumstances move people, conditions move people. That's way beyond you. This person, if you, let me read this. So God removes people to make space for what's aligned. All right. Their exit isn't a rejection. It's actually can be protective. It's actually could be divine. It actually could have been orchestrated. All right. They left so that you could, step into a version of yourself that, that you couldn't become if they would have stayed. All right. They left because because the version of you that needs to be rebirthed, right, can't be activated with them, or you don't have the potential to activate it in them. All right. So it can't be activated in you, or you don't have the potential to activate it in them. You know, now what I was going to say was, if you was reading a book and you knew that in chapter 5, all right, your life was a book, and you knew in chapter 5 this person was supposed to leave. All right. And you understood that, and that was the instruction, you would easily release that person, because you would have already got the instructions that, okay, this person is going to be with you for 5 years, and then they're going to leave, and then year 7, person B is going to come in to take you along your journey. But because there's so much uncertainty and not clarity in life, we will take a person that was supposed to only be in our life from chapter 1 to chapter 5, and we will, in a sense, try to make them stay with us all the way to chapter 10, right? But they wasn't meant to be in chapter 10. And as a consequence, you never get to chapter 10, right? You keep reliving chapter 5 over and over and over again, and you don't get an opportunity to really see chapter 6 and chapter 7 and chapter 8 and chapter 9. And a big reason why you're not getting the opportunity to get to those chapters is because this person is not activating, right? Activating that, right? Activating or nurturing that seed for you to grow. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me. All right. Your relationships want you to know that you never needed closure. All right. You needed clarity. All right. So if you're waiting for them to explain why they left, all right, you could be waiting for them to explain why they left, but closure isn't something that they can give you anyway. It's something that you give yourself. And I think that no reason that an individual can give when it hurts is going to be good enough. Like, you're going to be like, well, why you didn't tell me that then? Why is it? Why? But in your mind right now, you like, I just need to know. Like, I just want to talk to them. I just want to see what happened. And they could just be like, I got tired. And it's not going to be enough, right? It's still not going to be enough for you, because because closure is something you give yourself. All right. And the clarity you get, the closure that you get comes from the clarity. All right. And clarity is accepting that this connection, right, it's no longer aligned, and that's okay. All right. And that's your closure. All right. And if you got to say that every day for the next, week, for the next, month, or the next year, to really help that anchor into you, then I would, post it on a sticky note and put it on my bathroom and read it every morning when I brush my teeth. All right. And last but not least, your relationships want you to know that grieving people who left is how you make space for people who stay. All right. And for the people who have yet to come. All right. So as long as you're hiding and holding on, as long as you're holding on to people who are gone, you guys, you cannot fully receive people who are there. All right. Who are here with you right now in this moment. So when you release this relational grief, you actually make space. You make space for connection. All right. That matches who you are today and who you are becoming. All right. The people who were meant to stay, the people who are meant to come in. And again, sometimes just because of our relational dynamics with our parents or in our earlier years, we were taught to chase, right? And not to be chased, right? We were taught to fight for, right? And not to allow, individuals to fight for us, right? And I remember a long time, my grandfather told me, be with the man who loves you, right? Like, identify the man who loves you, and be with him. All right. And that just stuck with me. All right. And it was very different than my mannerisms at the time, right? Where I was a doer and, going out. And it's like, let them come. They will. All right. And again, I think because of these attachment styles, because of, what we've been taught, we tend to, chase and not be chasing. We tend to pursue and not be pursued. All right. And it's people in your life right now that are here, right, waiting to be activated. Those relationships are waiting to be activated and cultivated more. All right. So here's some insight that I want to share with you. Okay. You're wrestling with relational grief right now, mourning people who are still alive, but are no longer aligned. All right. You're no longer aligned with them, or they're no longer aligned with you. And you've been trying to keep someone who finally has already been released. All right. Because as long as you're holding on to people who are gone, you can't. The issue with that is that the longer you hold on to people who are gone, you guys, you can't fully receive the people who are here. All right. So relational grief, all right, it blocks connection. All right. It blocks your connection to your present space and your future becoming. All right. It keeps you really stuck in what is or what was instead of what is and what will be. All right. So when the value in knowing that is when we can release people who need, when we can release people without needing closure, we actually can make the space for the relationships that match who we are today. All right. And when I told a client that she had said, when I finally realized how to let go of my friendships, I stopped feeling guilty about growing. You guys, she said I didn't always know that I didn't need closure. Okay, I didn't always know that I didn't need closure. And she learned how to just accept the reality. So she said, I just needed to accept that. We're no longer aligned, and that's okay. Now, does that mean that you don't have an emotion about that? Does that mean that sadness does not come up? Does that mean that uncomfortable and dis-ease doesn't? Yes, it will, but that's a part of life, right? That's a part of life. All right. But just because that comes up, a lot of times we don't want to feel it. So we stay. And it's like, well, you're going to stay in the dis-ease of the relationship, or you're going to stay, or you're going to experience the dis-ease of the relationship, or you're going to experience the dis-ease from untaching, from grieving the relationship. But the dis-ease is going to be there. All right. And the power that you have is to choose which dis-ease do you want to experience. One will activate, right, you, and one will keep you in the loop. All right. All right. Research supports this because studies show that that unresolved relational grief actually activates the brain region, the same region of the brain as physical pain. All right. But when you accept the ending and release connection, the brain shifts from threat response in the amygdala to integration, which is the prefrontal cortex. Accepting literally heals your nervous system. So when you stop scrolling, when you stop looking, when you stop, like, your nervous system was like, okay, it's safe to grieve. All right, I can trigger a different part of the brain now. All right. All right. So we're talking about interactions. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat. We're talking about interactions this morning. And I think that there are 5 essential things that we need to know about relational grief. All right. You can love someone and still release them. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. All right. Some people are here for a season. They come, right? They come into our life to really teach us something. They help us grow. They serve as mirrors, right? They serve as mirrors to help us see what we need. All right. And when that season ends, you guys, it's okay to let them go. I think it's important to also know that you don't owe anyone an explanation for outgrowing them. All right. So if you're the person who left, or if you got left by a person, listen, you don't have to defend your growth. All right. You don't have to explain why you became this, why you need distance. All right. You are allowed to evolve. With that instruction and information, then know that nobody owes you one either. And a lot of us feel like people owe us an explanation. But if the shoe was on the other foot, you wouldn't feel like you owed them one, right? If you outgrew that relationship, if it was no longer serving you, you would realize that and you would leave, and you wouldn't feel the need to explain over and over and over again. You like deal with it, right? But when it's happening to you, right, we have a different request. All right. And nobody owes anybody anything, not at this grown age of an adult. Now, when we learn how to develop emotional intelligence, we learn conflict management, we develop those communication skills, then we're able to communicate throughout the relationship what's needed, the direction of the relationship, which will allow that process of building or dismantling to happen a lot more smoothly. But because a lot of us don't have communication skills, we don't have the emotional intelligence and know how to really do it, we end up severing the relationship, right? And then taking on the position of, I don't owe you anything. And it's not really from a healthy place. It's really an emotional disconnect. All right. It's I don't owe you anything because I'm emotionally disconnected and I'm in survival mode and I just got to take care of me. That's a very different place of I don't owe you anything in explanation than from a place of I'm giving myself permission to grow. I understand that that comes with an opportunity cost, right? And that cost could be this relationship, and you have 100% permission to do that. All right, and you don't owe an explanation for your growth. All right, you are allowed to release connections that don't match your evolution. All right, you are allowed to do that. Okay. Another thing that I want you to know about relational grief is that relational grief is real grief. Okay, it is a real grief, and you can honor that. All right, just because they're still alive, it doesn't mean that the loss, that the pain, that the sadness that you feel isn't real. You're mourning what they were to you. You mourning who you were to them, and you're mourning the future that you imagine with this individual. In that space, that deserves to be honored. Okay, all right. So please take the time to honor that. All right, and if you need help in doing that, again, join a project, get a therapist, somewhere where you can honor that space and then let it go. All right. And then last but not least, the people meant for you, they will stay. And the people that are meant for you are still in the winds and they're coming. All right. So when you release people who are misaligned, you actually make space for more alignment. All right. You actually make space for more alignment. The right connections really don't require you guys to shrink, to perform, or to prove. They celebrate who you are, today. And I talk about even the misaligned part of people. All right. So again, a lot of us are misaligned in our relationships. This person's supposed to be your friend, but they your man. This person's supposed to be, maybe your man, but you keep him as a friend because you have some attachment issues or some anxious, attachment issues, right? So a lot of times we're in misaligned relationships, all right. And when we can identify that right within ourselves and have that self-love, then our relationships will start to align. All right. So everybody around you, your friendships, they may just be misaligned. And so you have to really let go of the misalignment in the relationship, right? And that could be allowing that person to walk away, right? And allowing the relationship to dissolve, right? And then start back up again. All right. And like I said, I've experienced that multiple times, throughout my life. And I think it's a healthy way to be. Okay, it's a healthy way to be, and this is why you can meet people who could be something for somebody else and not that for you, because because the alignment or your relationship is not requiring that of that individual, and so they don't show up for you like that, or vice versa. They're not requiring that from you, and so you're not being that for them. All right. Right. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat. As we move on to our biblical wisdom on this morning, Ecclesiastes 3:5, 3:1 and 5. Listen, there is a time for everything, a season for every activity under the heavens, and a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Listen, this verse isn't about religion. It's truly about seasons, you guys, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. All right. So some relationships are meant for the season. They come to teach us, they come to grow us, and they come to shift us. And when that season is over, you guys, it's time to release that relationship. All right. And the God in you, that divinity, that divine wisdom knows when, guess what? It knows when it's time to let go. All right. Neuroscience supports this because it says that when you try to force connection that's no longer aligned, again, the brain operates in what's called cognitive dissonance. All right. Cognitive dissonance is the discomfort that you're holding inside, right? About two conflicting truths. I love them, but this is not working. And you live in cognitive dissonance too long, it will create chronic stress and deplete your nervous system. And so many of us are living with in cognitive dissonance in our relationship. I love them, but I don't know if I need to be here. I love them, but I don't know if this is working for me. And waking up with that pattern every day, right, is creating more and more stress. And something that just turned up to be an emotion one day, ends up turning into a mood and then ends up turning to a diagnosis, meaning you're sad right? And then you get into apathy and now you're depressed, right? Because you've lived in cognitive dissonance, these two conflicting truths that you're experiencing every day because you um, have not grieved and let this relationship go, whatever the relationship is, all right? All right. But when you accept, but neuroscience says that when you accept the ending, the brain shifts to what? Congruence. And when you are in alignment, and this is why alignment is so important. And I always talk about when you are in alignment between what you know and what you accept, right? This changes your chemistry. And so I always talk about the lemons condition. The lemons condition is a misalignment. All right. You're lacking the energy, the motivation, the organizational skills, necessary supports, and skill sets because you are misaligned in life. You're misaligned in relationships. You're misaligned in your profession. You're misaligned in the things that you want and you desire. All right. All right. And your journey in life is to do that. So, in short, this verse is saying some relationships, this verse is supporting that some relationships are meant for a season, not a lifetime, you guys. And when you release what's expired, guess what? That congruency happens and you honor what was and make space for what's next. All right. All right. Our promise verse for today is Jeremiah 29:11. And it says, the plans, for I know the plans I have for you, declared the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope in a future. Listen, notice this in the verse. It says plans to give you hope in a future. So when people when people leave, you think it's about loss. But if you just for a minute, all right, if you uh if you just take time to think for a minute, what if their exit was preparation for something better? All right. The God in you, your highest self, sees bigger. Okay. It sees bigger. So if scripturally it's already been promised to you that I know that I have plans for you, plans to prosper you into and not to harm you, then like I said this last week. He said God won't put nothing on you more than what you can stand. But you will. Your wounded person will. Your wounded mind will. All right. God has plans to give you hope uh in a future. God has plans to prosper you and not harm you. So everything is working for your good. So if you're holding on to a relationship that's harming you and you're not prospering in your life, all right, then it's not even alignment with your divinity. All right, that's not God doing that. That's your choices. All right, and that's the part that we have to understand and truly take what I call a cap. Either you causing it, you allowing it, or you participating in it. All right. And so it's okay to grieve. It's okay to let go. You are safe. All right. And neuroscience supports this particular verse by saying when people release people who are misaligned, the brain actually rewards those pathways by giving you dopamine, by triggering the dopamine levels activate when you connect with people who are aligned. That's why when you meet people, right, you align with, you like, oh my God, this is so purposeful. I feel so good. I don't feel like this at home. I don't feel like this in my other friendship, right? Because they're not aligned with you. Okay. They're not aligned with the person you are now. And life is showing you that, but we're still holding on. All right. All right. You literally feel better in relationships that match your growth. All right. Because the brain rewards that. All right. It's already in you, you guys. It's already in you. And your body is so intelligent that it's communicating this all the time. So in short, this scripture supports our lesson by saying when people leave, God is making room for what's aligned. All right. Their exit wasn't rejection, you guys. It's redirection for you both. So trust that. All right. Trust that who's meant to stay will stay. Who's meant to be will be. All right. And again, I say this is a two-way street. All right. The same way people have to let you go, and you have to let people go. All right. This is a two-way street. So let's put our hand on our heart and do our intention statement. Take that deep breath in. Now, speak this with intention out loud or silently. I release who I been trying to keep. I release who I've been trying to keep. I bless what we were. All right. I accept what we no longer can be. I make space for connection that matches who I'm becoming. All right. And I trust that I trust who's meant to stay, and I trust who's meant to come. All right. I am safe and it is safe to let go. I am safe to let go and it is safe to let go. All right. Notice how you feel in your body. Notice what happens in your stomach and your shoulders and things like that. And then take your breaths. All right. All right. And my last question, my anchor question for your biblical wisdom is, how does it feel in your body to know that you don't have to keep everyone? All right. You don't have to keep everyone. We can let some of this stuff, limit some of these people go, right? We can stop watering those relationships and grieve it. And like I said, grief is real, but you can go through it. You're safe to go through that grief. All right. So how do we put this into action? Name one person that you've been trying to keep that God has already released. How do you know that intuitively? You know, all right. Then write a goodbye letter that begins with I bless what we had or what we were. All right. And I release what we could never be. I bless what we were and I release what we could never be. Say that out loud and then say this out loud. I never needed closure. I just needed clarity. All right. And clarity comes from what? From you. All right. From you looking at that situation. If you can't gain clarity alone, then get an objective view. All right. Get an objective view. Get a therapist, get a coach or something like that to help you um, to get the clarity that you need. All right. Your audit for today. The people I've been trying to keep is, or the person I've been trying to keep is blank. All right. I've been holding on because of what? All right. And what I really need to accept is what? And releasing them would mean what? All right. Answer those questions. Challenge yourself today. Your affirmation for today is I bless what is. I release what cannot be, can no longer be. I bless what is, and I release what can no longer be. Your intention statement as we move forward throughout today is today, I choose clarity over closure. All right. If you want that challenge this week, unfollow or mute one person that you've been trying to keep who's no longer aligned with you. All right. You don't need to explain. This is for you. So you just release it. All right. Okay. All right. I enjoyed this conversation today. As I give you this call, this challenge, this charge, I again ask you to go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you share this conversation if you feel like it was relevant. Drop a fire in the chat if it really resonated with you. Let's celebrate our growth together. And here's my call. I'm saying, what truth are you walking away with today? Your challenge today: write a goodbye letter that begins with I bless. Listen, I bless what we were and I release what we no longer could be. And then you already know what I'm going to charge you with. I'm charging you to go shape your life. All right. Not by keeping everyone, but by honoring who's in alignment. All right. By honoring who's in alignment. Listen, some relationships end not because they were bad. All right. But because you grew or because that person grew. All right. And this is not a bad thing. You've been trying to keep something in your life that God has already released. And it's really okay to let that version of your life go. All right. And then grieve that. Give space to honor that. All right. Not because the love wasn't real, you guys, but because the love has served its purpose. All right. So you never needed closure. All right. You never needed closure. You just need clarity about what this relationship means, what it has done, and how it has served you. All right. And then we have to let go of what we have to be able to let go of what no longer could be. And I know that you're tied to that vision, right? But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. All right. If you still want to be married, you can be married. If you still want to have that best friend that you laugh, stay up all night with, you can do that. All right. It may not be with the people in your life right now, but when they leave, don't throw those desires out with them. Grieve that relationship. reset, right? So you can get ready for your next chapter. All right. Good morning, Sal. Good morning, Shantae. How you guys doing on this morning? Thanks for your comments. All right. So tomorrow it's Gratitude Shift Wednesday, you guys. We're talking about the weight of what we could have been. Oh, right. It's about focus. All right. Where our energy goes, our attention flows. So where our energy goes, our attention flows. So giving or grieving the future you imagine, that grieving the future you imagined that won't exist. All right. All right. A lot of us are carrying this weight of what could have been or what should have been. All right. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. I will see you then. Here's your motivation. The end of a relationship again doesn't mean that you wasted love. It just means that it served its purpose, you guys. So tonight, I want you to say it out loud. I bless what was and I release what no longer can be for this relationship. Not what no longer can be for me, but what no longer can exist in this relationship, because you didn't need that closure. You just needed clarity, you guys. So this is your lesson. This lesson gives you the permission to release the people, all right? Not the dreams, not the hopes, and not the aspirations, but the people that you have attached to the dreams, hopes, and aspirations, so that and grieve those individuals, but still hold on to those dreams, all right? So that you can experience the life that you desire and deserve, with the faith knowing that the people are coming and there's people here who are going to help you to experience the very thing that you want to experience. So again, this lesson is your permission slip to really release that the people that you've been trying to keep. All right. All right. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I will see you tomorrow. Listen, for that life lesson. Oh, remember that if you can shape it in your mind, you can have it in your life. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I will see you tomorrow for that life lesson. Till later.